Hey everyone. Hopefully this is working. This is our first time going live. So I'll just wait a little bit for people to trickle in and kind of get here and we can kick off the live show. And again, this will be an opportunity to answer all of your PM interview questions. Hopefully this is a really valuable experience for all y'all. And yeah, thanks for folks chiming in. Definitely comment and let me know on the side. Brima, I'm doing well. I'm excited to do this, a little nervous. This is our first time going live on YouTube. Um, so we'll see how it goes and would love your feedback and guidance along the way. I'm just going to go ahead and let some folks know that we are officially live. Um, we weren't scheduled to start for another 3 minutes, so I'll let some folks trickle in. And again, this session will be an opportunity for everyone watching to get their answers on PM interviews. So we're going to be focusing on talking about PM interview prep. I'm really excited to jump in with some questions. So if you do have questions, definitely let me know in the chat on the side or just say hello or give us a like or subscribe. There's a couple of things that I'll go over with you in terms of my favorite tips with product management interviews. But again, this is meant to be super, super interactive. We do these shows normally that have the mock interviews, as you probably know, and all these other things, but we're trying to make this one focus specifically on answering your questions and being here to answer your questions. So definitely let me know in the chat with all of the questions that you have. And hey, to Vivi and Yaroslav, thanks for everyone for joining. It's cool to see everyone live. Definitely feel free to ask me questions. So I do want to start off and just kind of talk about some of the most basic, most helpful frameworks that help in PM interviews. And so we're going to start there and we're going to talk a little bit about what I think is really important. And then would love to answer questions throughout and we can kind of break for that. So one of the most important pieces of information that I really, really want to make sure you come away with for product management interviews is that really fundamentally these interviews can often be a lot about anxiety and about your imposter syndrome and nervousness. And so if there's one thing that you could take away from this live stream or one thing that I want you to take away, it would be just remember to practice and to be calm and confident. Like those are one of the most important things to do. And the most basically like the way to be confident and the way to be kind of lower anxiety in these interviews is really to focus on practicing as much as possible. And so again, like if I had to say one thing, it'd be reduce your anxiety by practicing. Get that practice in, find a practice partner, find a coach who might be able to help you. Obviously at Exponent, at tryexponent.com, we have a ton of resources. And so we're available to help you. But it's just a really important thing to me. I know how stressful interviewing can be. It can kind of be like dating, a lot of rejection, a lot of feelings of, I'm not good enough, or maybe this is a really tough situation for me, or I don't know who I am in this context. And so I want to empathize with that. It's really hard, very, very hard to go through some of this stuff. But it's also an opportunity for you to grow in that way and to get those reps in. I guarantee you'll feel so much better when you get that practice in. So I see a lot of chats coming through. Thanks, Jocelyn, and for other folks who are chiming in. We can kind of answer some questions in just a bit. I do want to acknowledge some of the questions around what I just mentioned around practice. And so Brima is asking a question like, how do you prioritize what to practice per day? Like there's so much out there to prioritize. Of course, a good product manager should know how to prioritize effectively, but it's tough. It's hard to know what to actually practice. What I would do when I'm thinking about my PM interviews, let's say I'm interviewing, there's a certain set of common types of questions: estimation, product design, analytical, etc. I'd get briefed on each of them, and then I'd do one practice from each type. So do one estimation, one analytical, one product design, etc. And then once you do that, you can actually get a sense of which ones you're good at and which ones you're not as good at. And so one thing that I really strongly believe in that's really important to practice is self-reflection. So don't just go through like 100 mock interviews. I know some people do that. Don't go through 100 mock interviews and expect to get better. What makes you better is that self-reflection piece right at the end, where you can also kind of reflect and say, hey, was that good? Was that not good? And so one tip I recommend folks is to actually record yourself as you do the mock interviews. That helps a ton because when you're recording yourself, you can actually see like, okay, that was weird, or like, okay, like that didn't look very good, or like I didn't say that the way that I wanted to, and you can kind of take notes on your own recording. I know it's painful to sometimes watch yourself recording. I've gotten used to it doing all these videos all the time, but it's one of the best ways to grow and develop. Um, cool. So I'm going to look at some of the other questions. So, it seems like there's a lot of questions around. Wow, a lot of questions. Okay. And yeah, definitely keep them coming. This is awesome. I do want to get through at least one more kind of like tip before I jump to some of these questions. I know I talked a little bit about the importance of practice and reducing your anxiety and confidence. I did want to share, there's a study that was done recently where they put software engineering interview candidates in two rooms. In one room, in one of these rooms, the software engineering candidates were had a interviewer present in the room, so there was someone else there evaluating them. In the other room, they had a software engineering candidate with no interviewer present. And the study proved, actually, it's by NC State, they proved that the software engineering candidates with the interviewer present performed worse. And so I do want to really hammer in this point about, like just the anxiety and the feelings around having someone observe you can make you actually perform worse in an interview. And so one of the most effective ways to do that, at least the way Exponent believes, is that the practice part can really help reduce that gap and make you feel less like there's someone in the room or less anxious about someone being in the room with you. And so I do want to make sure people remember that point and really emphasize like practice-based learning is really important. We do have resources at Exponent where you can do peer mock interviews with peers every single day. And that's an opportunity to do that, but you can also find friends and practice partners as well. So the other tip that I do want to take, I want to make sure you all remember when it comes to PM interviews, I want to dig a little deeper on one of the most common types of PM interview questions, which are the brainstorming kind of like product design questions. And a lot of people ask me, okay, Stephen, like, how do I come up with these 10x ideas? Like, I see all these ideas and they're so innovative, they're so cool, they're so brilliant. Like, I feel like I can't think of them on my own. And I think of these like sort of small feature improvements. And so this isn't an approach to solving the entire product design interview question. There are videos on our YouTube channel that I definitely recommend you check out for those specific purposes to get a sense of the full spectrum. But for specifically that part around brainstorming, which I know is really hard, I have a general suggestion on how to go about this. And so my recommendation, I kind of call it the like big ideas list strategy. And so what I want each of you to do, and in the chat below, I would love for you guys to type out like, what are your big ideas? Like, what are some of the big ideas in tech that you think are going to change technology in the future, like shared economy or context awareness? Do any of you have any ideas of like really cool big ideas that you'd like to share? Just post in the chat. And so while y'all are posting some of your big ideas or some of the cool things that you think about in technology, each of you should have your own list of things that you think are really important, big ideas, things that are like, okay, like I think that this is going to change the world and I know it really, really well. So let's say on my list, two of them are shared economy and context awareness. I'm seeing Benson saying ambient computing could be one, and AR, VR, yeah, I was saying like, yeah, these are all really cool ideas, like really innovative ideas. And they are kind of like broader themes. And so now, commonly product design questions, they're asked of you something like this. How would you improve the library? How would you redesign the airport? How would you, improve your favorite product? And a lot of them kind of boil down to how would you think about the future of X or X, Y, Z? And I think what you can do with these questions to brainstorm some innovative ideas is take this list of big ideas, right? We have Benson's ambient computing, Samuel says emotional AI, Brima says IoT. Take some of these ideas and apply them to the concept that you're dealing with and see if you can come up with something. So, for example, libraries. One of mine I said was shared economy. Maybe not as much in COVID, but still, I believe the shared economy and the principles around that are really important. And so what I do is I would take that shared economy principle and apply it to the library. What I get is a decentralized library system where I can borrow books from my neighbors and they can borrow books from me. Now, libraries are spread across communities as opposed to being in just one physical location. Cool idea. Another one could be maybe the context awareness piece that I mentioned earlier, or kind of ambient computing, like Benson is saying. You could do something where the computers are, maybe you walk into a library and the computer system knows exactly what you want. They scan your eyeball, or they scan maybe your profile, or you connect to the library system and it tells you, go to this aisle, or like go to this section in the library. You'll love this section. That stuff is really cool. And again, what I'm doing is a strategy for coming up with some of these ideas for people who may have trouble coming up with them, because I know it can be kind of challenging and seem intimidating. This is just one strategy to do this. This is not like the only way to do it. This is just one effective strategy. Cool. And so now I want to go to some of these questions. I know the questions have piled up since I have come, and wow, 60 people are here, which is really cool. Thanks all for, by the way, who are liking and subscribing and all that kind of stuff. Like I see all these emojis on my screen and stuff, so it's really nice. So I appreciate that. So I want to go back up to the top and talk through some of these questions that folks have asked. So Rajat is asking, okay, how do I handle estimation questions for an area where I just have no clue? Good question. Estimation questions, they seem like they require a lot of requisite knowledge, right? Like, how am I supposed to estimate the number of YouTube ads that are being watched per day around the world? That's a hard question. But what you can do is you can actually estimate things with assumptions, and the assumptions can be kind of flexible, or they can rely on kind of flaky knowledge. So Rajat, even if you don't know the like YouTube ad space, surely you can at least calculate roughly how many YouTube viewers that might be, right? There are 300,000 people in the US, and there's this many people in this situation. And you can kind of calculate it from there. And I do recommend, Raja, having an estimation fact sheet. We have one in the Exponent course, but you can just kind of make your own of like, based on the population of different countries and revenue of different companies, just to give yourself like a little bit of security around like, okay, like I kind of know these are the main numbers that are important for me. Prithvi is asking tips for tech product managers on the data analytics and machine learning products. That's a big topic, Prithvi, but what I would say in general that helps with interviewing specifically, because we're focusing on interviewing, when you're thinking about data analysis, when you're thinking about metrics, I really like to use this idea of starting with goals, going down to kind of like the actions that support those goals, and then measuring those actions with metrics. So as much as possible, kind of start at the high level, like what are my goals overall? So then go down to, okay, these are the actions that support those goals, and then how do I measure those actions? Happy to go into more detail if it's helpful. And then I want to go through, wow, okay, so we got Debasish is asking, how do you improve your product sense? How do I come up with solutions quickly enough that I'm not stagnating? I get very nervous. So Debasish, let me know if that bit that I just added helped answer that question about the kind of like big ideas list that hopefully should help a lot with getting a little bit closer to that. Yaroslav is asking, any tips on how to do well with take-home assignments? I've been interviewing a lot, doing a lot of take-home assignments, but I've been yet to pass the bar. Yeah, I get it. It's kind of tough. Take-home assignments are tough because they require a lot of work for you, and sometimes you just get a rejection and it doesn't really feel so great. The key that I would do with take-home assignments is really understanding the problem as much as you possibly can. It's easy to kind of like jump into the take-home assignment problem because you don't have that interaction with the interviewer that you normally do in an actual interview setting. So what I would recommend is, as much as possible, try to focus on understanding the question. You can email back the person who sent you that take-home assignment to ask clarifying questions. I think that actually shows more thoughtfulness and more interest in the role than normally. So I'd recommend starting there, really understanding the problem. And then I would also recommend, like, one thing that's easy to do in a take-home assignment is to go on too long. Summarize with key bullet points or the key top things. Like, what should I take away from this? What are your key insights? And then the third tip that I recommend for this is have a thesis, have a perspective in your assignment, something that's arguable. So don't just come in and say like, hey, I think we should improve Gmail because we should make it faster, et cetera, et cetera. Come in and say like, okay, I think we should improve Gmail to make it more delightful. I think delight is the key principle here. And that's what I'm going to come, that's the only thing I want you to come away with from this conversation. So you see how that kind of has a more arguable, more interesting perspective, more insightful perspective that can be a little more helpful when it comes to answering a take-home assignment. Hopefully that helped, folks, and definitely just give me a thumbs up or let me know in the chat if I'm helping or if I'm missing anything also. I'm going to skip some of these questions. Feel free to ask them again towards the end because I want to kind of catch up with the live stream as well. Daniel is saying, hey, Stephen, I have very disorganized and unstructured thinking. What are some tips for developing a more structured mindset and flow for product interviews? Okay, so I think, you know, you may have disorganized and unstructured thinking, Daniel, but I guarantee you can put those things in a structure that works well. And so one tactic that I'd like you to take away from this is introducing something called like brainstorming mode. And so what you can do, especially for a video interview where it's hard to display kind of like what you're thinking or how you're thinking about something, is what you do is basically something like I'll role play it. I'll say, hey, Daniel, I want to answer this question, but I need to kind of brainstorm. So I'm going to take a moment to do some out loud brainstorm thinking. This is not my actual answer. I'm just going to kind of communicate and speak out loud, and then I'll boil it down to a structure. And then you go through the brainstorm part, and then at the end, you can bubble it back into that structure. Say, okay, based on my brainstorm, it seems like my main points were 1, 2, and 3. And one other thing, Daniel, definitely don't be afraid to take time. One thing that is the most common mistake is people jump straight into the answer. Even just 30 seconds of pause can give you a lot of clarity about the answer. You do not have to answer immediately. So hopefully that helps you, Daniel, and let me know if it does. Andrew is asking, okay, like as a software engineer looking to transition to PM, what auxiliary skills will transition well and what areas will I need to spend more time understanding? Andrew, that's a very broad question, but when I'm thinking about transitioning from software engineer to product manager, the things that I would really key into here are what experience do you have actually designing those products and kind of doing that inner cross-functional work that you might be doing as a product manager. And so what I'd actually recommend for you, Andrew, is if you're interested in this switch, talk to your manager and see if you can find projects that fit that description, that are kind of like more like product management, that you can then use to parlay your skills to transition into that role. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Xing is asking, okay, the Google APM interview, one of the scariest ones, right? The technical round. What should people do? How should I prepare? And the technical question is one of the most common questions that we get all the time. Like, how do I prepare for these? Generally, the way I would think about this is technical questions are, testing some level of technical knowledge, but they're testing, think about what they're testing for. They're testing for your understanding as a product manager on the job. And so product managers on the job do not need to know how to code. They do not need to know like detailed, complicated SQL commands. They need to know some basic stuff like they might need to know how the internet works. If you're working at a technology product, it's important that you know how the internet works. And so some of these basic higher level principles are helpful. We do have a module in our course that talks a little bit about the technical interview. And generally it's stuff like, okay, how would you evaluate trade-offs between two types of products or two engineering implementations? How would you manage, a code base that needs repair versus a stakeholder that really needs this product to ship ASAP? And so thinking about technical questions like that can be a little more helpful. There's also a totally free database online where you can browse through interview questions that have been asked by Google at tryexponent.com/questions. And so you can check that out too, and just see kind of like which technical interview questions have actually been asked by Google to get a better sense of what it's like. So hopefully that helps, Xing, for you. Aman, I'm going to talk about behaviorals in just a bit. And so I'll just make a note about that. So I'll bring that up in just a bit. And then, yeah, Yaroslav, thanks for mentioning Otter AI. That's a really cool tool. I've used it before. It can help transcribe your own interview answers. And so you can take a look at them after you answer them. So Benson is asking, okay, about the pace of answering questions. I'm a little nervous about answering the pace. Like, do I go fast? Do I go slow? And Benson's saying that he answers in 5 minutes, but that's seems way too fast for him. Great question. Generally, the way I think about pacing is really via check-ins. And so there's two types of check-ins. I'm wondering if people are familiar with it because I do mention it a lot sometimes, but yeah, generally the way I think about this is let me just try to find there's a whole video on it that I'll try to find later, but basically there's two ways to check in with the interviewer. I'm going to role play it right now. Hey, Benson, I think that the height of the Empire State Building is around this much. Please interrupt me if you feel like I'm going in the wrong direction, but next I'd like to go to talk about the foundation and how much it weighs. So that was a passive check-in, what I did right there. I prompted you as the interviewer, Benson, to check in with me, but I did not pause or ask you to intervene. Here's an active check-in. Hey, Benson, I just calculated the height of the Empire State Building. I want to pause there and see if you have any directional changes before I move on to the next step. Does that sound okay? And you basically ask for a ping back from your interviewer. Your interviewer is like, okay, great, like that was good, or okay, great, like I like what you did, but we need to shift it in this direction. And that can kind of having more of those check-ins can kind of gut check, like, okay, how long am I taking? Am I taking too long? Am I taking too short? For estimation questions, they can go kind of short, but the last thing that I would recommend, Benson, is to think about the trade-offs at the end. So at the very end of the conversation that you're having, mention trade-offs. Like, okay, like if you're calculating the weight of the Empire State Building, for example, you can say something like, okay, are there people in the building? Here is the case if it's in the daytime. Here's the case with furniture. Here's not the case with furniture, things like that. And you can even just prompt the interviewer and say, like, okay, these are some directions I could go. I could evaluate these different scenarios. Like, what do you think? Do you think this would be valuable? So hopefully that was helpful to you, Benson. Cool. I'm gonna try to hop around. Oh wow, Miss Spring, MA Spring has a Facebook PM interview tomorrow. Good luck. Definitely good luck on that interview. Um, yeah, and Daniel sounds like the brainstorm mode is helpful. Andrew sounds like that was helpful. Breema's asking about referrals for companies like Google. Yeah, definitely get referrals if you have them. You can always LinkedIn, cold email, things like that. It's definitely really helpful if you can get referrals. People who are transitioning from product design. So if you're transitioning from product design, again, I would just look at the job description of the product manager and see what you're missing and kind of try to fill in the gaps there. Communicate with your manager as well. There's a lot of opportunities to work there. But Megan, let me know if you have a specific question that I can answer around that transition. Let's see. For someone, Hung is asking, for someone without any knowledge or experience in PM, SWE, or computer science, what hard skills should I acquire prior to interview preparation? Or do you recommend me to use interview preparation as a way to learn? That's a great question. Why we think about interviewing at Exponent is that interviewing is actually part of a learning journey. You have 2 to 3 months to actually learn new material, to meet new people, to practice your communication skills. And I would treat it more optimistically, like an opportunity for you to grow. That can be very helpful, especially if you're thinking about all the rejections and things like that. If you think about it more as like, hey, I'm growing as a person, like this is a learning opportunity for me. And so Hung, like for you who are, it sounds like you might want to transition into product management or software engineering. Some of the hard skills that I would build, I would treat it more like a learning journey. Like what skills do you think would be valuable for you, would be exciting for you to learn? And you can kind of tailor that learning experience for you based on that. But just like we do as product managers and think about the goals and how they bubble down to the low level actions, I would think about that for your career. What are your goals, Hung, and how can you think about the low level metrics or actions that support that goal? And so that would be a personal decision. Varun is asking, okay, it seems like mocks are key. How can I practice with experts regularly? So Exponent is a company that I founded that helps you do exactly that. You can go to tryexponent.com and you can check out our tools. We have a peer practice tool where every day you can find a practice partner to mock interview with for your interviews. We also have expert coaches. These are former interviewers at the companies that you would be interviewing with. There's nothing better than getting someone who actually has been an interviewer to interview you. It's almost like the real life experience. You can get that to happen at tryexponent.com as well. We have a coaching tab for that. So that would be my main recommendation there. But also always friends and practice partners can be really helpful. Cool. So folks are asking, oh, I love this quote that Andrew just pasted. Perfection is achieved not when there is nothing more to add, when there's nothing left to take away. That's a cool one. Yeah, so I think that, that totally applies to well-designed products, but also to people in some ways too, right? So I want to pause there and talk about one of the earlier topics, which is behavioral interview questions. And I'd love to do something a little more interactive for this one. I'd love for you all to tell. So first of all, behavioral interview questions really scary, right? They can seem ambiguous, actually, and in some ways they can be more challenging than the other ones because you're so nervous or you're not sure what to say. With behavioral interviews, one strategy that I really like to employ is thinking about it from the perspective of how does my narrative align to the company's narrative? And so, my narrative is like, hey, I used to be at a startup and now I'm going to a big tech company. Why do I want to do that? Like, what are my goals? And how does that align with the goals of the company as well? So let's say I'm really passionate about social impact, and I want to work at Facebook because I want to change the way Facebook does social impact. Or I think that there's an opportunity here to do a lot of good for the world, and I want to be a part of that. I used to work in a company that did not have any of that opportunity and was a much smaller company, and I'm really excited to work at a company like Facebook where it does have that kind of opportunity. And again, like having this in your head, you don't have to like say it word for word, but having this in your head can help you in that behavioral interview, because then you'll be able to actually, when you jump into the behavioral interview, you'll be able to weave in some of those things. The other thing that I recommend for behavioral interviews, and this is something that I'd love to get your feedback on, is a story bank. And so come into interviews, especially for companies like Amazon that rely a lot on these leadership principles, which I'm happy to talk more about. Come into the interview with some stories that you've already drafted up or you already thought about. That's a great way to basically get ready for the interviews because you'll be able to pull from these stories that are contextually relevant as you need them. And I would say like 5 to 10 is probably enough. You don't need so many. Make sure each story is really rich, vivid, that you can speak to it really effortlessly, and that it's exciting and passionate for you to talk about. But what I'd love for people to chat in the comments below, just briefly mention some of the stories that you use in your behavioral interviews. Like how do you answer the questions? Tell me about a time you disagreed with someone and how did it get resolved? Or how do you answer the question like, tell me a time where you had to go against the grain in the company? Things like that. I think it's always helpful to see other people's answers. And I'd love for the folks watching this channel right now to interact with each other. So just paste like, 2 sentences of like a story or an experience that you had that you thought might be helpful as a behavioral interview story bank. And again, like that's a homework assignment that I recommend to you is just list out some stories that you have that you can weave into these behavioral interview answers. Cool. I've been talking for almost 28 minutes now, according to my live stream tool. So I do want to pause there. And again, like if you have questions, I'm here to answer them. This is a live Q&A, but also meant to be super interactive. And so would love to like continue to interact with all of you. I'm hoping to do an execution style test question with you later today in the session. So maybe about 5 minutes. I'll try to answer some questions, and then we can actually do a case interview together and where you will all be interviewing me, and I can kind of walk through what that process looks like. But let me pause there. Also, if you're watching this right now, please do send us a like and subscribe to our channel. It means a lot. Subscribing will help you get the latest updates. We publish now basically every week with new interview prep content to help you prepare for your interview. So definitely just subscribe if you want to get those updates. And if you're enjoying this content or you feel like it's valuable, the likes mean a lot. Please do send us a like, and I really appreciate it. Cool. So let me just take a quick drink. I know we're speeding through a lot of stuff, and we're going to get into answering some questions and jumping into the case interview question that I'll do with all of you in just a moment. All right. So let's see. What questions do we have? Raza is asking how important is vendor management as a product manager? I'm going to go ahead and say like probably not that important. I mean, definitely important as a product manager, sorry, but not that important in product management interviewing. I would just treat it more like an experiential thing. And we're going to focus on product management interviewing today. And unfortunately not on the product management role because that's a whole separate discussion. JJ is asking, hey, any advice for someone in product sales transitioning to PM? Do I need more technical qualifications? JJ, what I'd recommend, when you think about transitioning into product management, what I recommend is, again, looking at those job descriptions and seeing what you're lacking. I don't know enough about product sales to exactly advise you or your specific role, but generally, what are the skills that you don't have and what are the skills that you need to learn and how will you go about getting those skills? That's my strategy for any transition when you think about that. Same with Avi, you're asking, how do I move into PM after spending 5 years in sales and account management? Again, look at those job descriptions, figure out the skills that are lacking, and then how you're going to go about accomplishing those skills. So that's on the one hand, we have the skills, kind of like the skill-based approach. But on the other hand, like we also need to network and hustle and get into these roles. And so I would start B and JJ connecting with other PMs, LinkedIn, emailing, joining PM networks and things like that, and communicating with other PMs, because that will be really helpful to start getting your foot in the door and start understanding what the role is like more, starting to understand what the interview processes is like, and getting referrals where you can as well. And so there's like, skill up over here, and there's also, tactically find those opportunities and get connected with people and opportunities that can help you get there. Gary is asking, I'm transitioning to a product manager role internally with absolutely no background in technology or product management. What is your best advice? Gary, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I do want to focus on the interview, but if I had to say one piece of advice, it's listen. One of the most undervalued skills as a product manager is being able to actively listen, come into the role, have one-on-ones with everyone on the team and ask them, how can I help you? Or what are the areas that you would like to see me develop into for this particular role? That can be phenomenally helpful when you actually come into the role and just coming into a perspective of understanding and trying to understand where people are at and how you can be helpful. Abi, you do not need a technical qualification or certification to be a product manager. Common misconception, you do not need a certification. Raza is asking a very tricky and open-ended question, and I struggle with, is how you manage the roadmap for your previous product. How much detail should we provide? Raza, again, there's some tactics that I would recommend here that are a little higher level than a specific question. And I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I think when I was talking about something else, but you can just say, hey, interviewer, I'm going to go through about like 3 minutes of this, and feel free to ask me more if you want me to deep dive more. You can do some of these strategies that help you get aligned with your interviewer about how much time to take. And this is irrespective of the question. You can say stuff like that. You can even point blank ask the interviewer, like, hey, I just went through about 3 minutes. It's a very high level overview. Would you like me to go deeper? Something like that can be really helpful. Andrew is saying, a lot of your videos resonate with me because of the ability you have to generalize and see the big picture. What do you attribute this skill, and how do you contribute to get better at this? Well, first of all, Andrew, thanks for the compliment. I really appreciate it. I think that the way that I think about the big picture is really being able to think of some of those big ideas and those big trends and weaving those into your answers. So I was kind of doing that earlier with the big ideas list, if you remember, but thinking more conceptually, like, okay, what are the big trends here? What are the big changes here, and how can we tie in those big changes into the little changes? And that's like a lot of what product management is, right? Like you have these high level objectives, boil them down to OKRs. You have these high level goals, boil them down to metrics, things like that. And so how can you kind of balance and think about that funnel of like high level to low level can be really helpful. Tim is asking, what is the time frame for large tech firms to start sending out interview times for internship roles? With COVID, Tim, I have honestly no clue. I would ask the recruiters of the companies or your peers or students. There are a lot of people in the Exponent community that you can ask, but I think some offers are getting sent out, or some internships are opening up now too. Okay, so we got a lot more questions, but I want to try out something kind of weird on live, YouTube Live. And so if you don't mind, I'd love to try out something kind of weird where we're going to do a live mock interview with all of you. And so you're going to use the chat to answer these questions. And so the question that I want to ask you today is a question, if you've done our simulator, you're familiar with this question. But I want to ask you this question. I'll get back to some of the questions that you're asking. The question today, I am a data analyst at Facebook. You all are the product managers. All 60 of you are the product managers at Facebook. And we're noticing a 4% decline in our mobile usage. We're noticing a 4% decline in our mobile usage. What do we do? So the way that I want you to go about this is I want you to use the chat to ask me questions. So again, use the chat. You can type in questions for me. I'm a data analyst. I can answer questions about the data, but if you use the chat, I can go through and kind of like try to help answer them. This is an execution type interview question. This is like more analytical, and by going through this, we'll be able to hopefully help give you a sense of how to answer some of these questions. And so this is an interview we can do just based on chat and me being live. Jump into it and go ahead and start asking me questions as a data analyst. How would you diagnose this issue if Facebook is experiencing a 4% decline on mobile usage? Great. So Brima is asking, are we focusing on a specific region? And Apeksha is asking, is it gradual or sudden? All right, let me start with some of the questions and I'll get to some of them later. Apeksha's question, it's sudden. We're seeing a decline in the past 24 hours. Oh yeah, Andrew is asking, okay, we're seeing a 4% decline in mobile usage on Facebook's mobile platform. I'm your data analyst. Ask me questions to diagnose the issue. Okay, let's see if I can pin it. There we go. Okay, there we go. It's pinned, and I got a ton of questions to answer. MA Spring is asking, is it Christmas? No, it's not Christmas, unfortunately. It's not Christmas. It's actually today. Like, let's imagine it's just this specific day. Apeksha is asking, is it gradual or sudden? It is a sudden drop. We're seeing it in the past 24 hours. We're seeing, okay, clarify, Rhythm VJJ is asking, is it on Android or iOS? We're seeing a higher decrease in the Android users than the iOS users, but we're seeing it across both platforms. Raza is asking the timeline. Again, yes, it's sudden. And Abi is asking, okay, can we confirm if there was an app update? Yes, there was an app update yesterday. We just updated to version 15.0 yesterday on the Facebook app on both Android and iOS. If we were to split between mobile devices, do we see the decline across all the platforms? Tim is asking. No, we only see it on mobile users, mostly mobile users, some tablets, but not on desktop platforms. Is there any particular platform where the issue is happening? I think I just answered that question. What operating system? Is it a specific operating system? So I think what Hamid, Apeksha, and Bremer are asking is like, let's slice by the operating system, right? So if we see version 14.0 versus version 13.0 versus version 12.0 of like iOS, for example, do we see a deviation in the decline up and down? And we do not see a pattern there. So that's a very useful technique of slicing and kind of like isolating that variable, but we're not seeing a differential based on that. Kriti is asking an excellent question. How do we even define usage? What does usage even mean? Usage is defined as a page view. Let's say a page view of the app or a page view of the web Facebook experience, someone who views a page. Okay, people are asking the location as well. So let's say that we actually find out some really interesting news. It's only in the country of Brazil. We're only seeing this decline in the country of Brazil. JJ is asking, is it on Facebook only or on Instagram, Messenger, and WhatsApp? We are seeing the decline across Instagram, Messenger, and WhatsApp as well. Just Curious is asking, are there any technical issues reported? Not as far as I know. I'm not totally sure. Sachin says panic. I'm not totally sure what that means, but maybe we should panic. I'm not sure. Okay, so I'm seeing some questions that are like, are they from new users to old users? So let's look at the age of the user, maybe like how old they are. We do not see a pattern across that. Some of these typos, are they using wife or data? I'm assuming you meant Wi-Fi or data. Yeah, just making fun. Yesterday was not Christmas either, Raz. Christmas, let's imagine it's today. It's like October 7th. It's October 7th. But I think Raz is asking something kind of interesting, which is like, oh, okay, is there a holiday? But we're in Brazil, so we don't know the Brazilian holidays. So how would we find this out? So can anyone tell me? Here's just a quick divergent question. Can anyone tell me how would you find out if there is some kind of event going on? We work at Facebook, is my hint. There must be a way we can find out if there's an event going on. The live stream always lags, so it takes a little bit of time. But in the meantime, I'll go ahead and try to answer some of the other questions. So, is it across all pages or specific pages only? Kriti, it's across all Pages. Okay, there we go. The event stuff came in. Yeah, so Richa is looking, Tim is saying it, Benson is saying it. Yeah, Facebook, we own events, right? Or we like have a big stake in events. And so we can actually look at Facebook events and see if there are more events created today than other days, or more events within this recent range, and then see if there's a pattern there that might map to whether or not there are holidays. And so when we look at the data, we do not see a pattern. We do not see as many, like more events than we would normally. Um, okay, cool. So we know it's in Brazil. We know that there's some issues on mobile platforms, and but we don't know exactly what's going on still. Jocelyn is asking, are there any disasters in Brazil? Jocelyn, unfortunately, I'm only a data analyst. How would you like me to go ahead and find out if there are disasters in Brazil? Is there something in particular I can do? Some other people are saying, is there a network outage? Again, I'm not Brazilian, unfortunately. So I can't quite answer that question, but is there a way that I could answer that for you? Megan says, take my money, soul. I'm not sure what that is referring to. It's referring to Exponent, maybe. Um, is this a year-over-year trend we're seeing, Brian? That's a great question. It's not a year-over-year trend. Any changes in push notifications? We did push an app yesterday. Can anyone tell me how we'd figure out whether or not the app is the one causing the issue? We used this technique earlier. Look at statuses and hashtags. Yeah, that's a good idea. When was the last time something like this happened? I can't tell. It doesn't look like it has happened anytime recently. Okay, so Abi got it. Okay, everyone give like a clap to Abi. Like, well, not you didn't get it, but that was the thing that I was trying to get to right there, which is yes, let's look at version 13, version 14, and see the usage patterns on both to see if the app update caused the issue. Then we can eliminate all app updated related issues. We do not see a pattern, unfortunately. But I think Kriti, you said a network outage can be figured out by looking at CDNs. Yeah, like this is really close to the right answer, right? Because we can basically diagnose a network outage by slicing, doing the same thing we just did, slicing based on the cellular provider. And so what we'll do here is we'll say, okay, like, is it Verizon? Is it T-Mobile? But obviously there's different ones in Brazil. So let's say we look at it and then we see that a Brazilian telecom named Brazil Telecom A has completely gone. Like all the users on that telecom are gone. And so big round of applause for Kriti. Kriti, you basically got to the right answer. I know a lot of you probably did too, so Kriti's not, the only one, but that is the final answer. The answer is that the network outage happened in the country of Brazil, and that caused a 4% decline across Facebook's mobile usage. Obviously, these numbers are kind of made up, but these kinds of things can actually happen, and they can impact Facebook. It's a frustrating issue because we as Facebook can't do much to solve that issue, but it's an awesome opportunity to show your PM interview skills. And so in just a moment, I'm going to go through and tell you a little bit more about how I would go about answering this question. And I'm going to link to another tip as well. So for those of you who loved this, I'm going to unpin that message and just say, check out simulator.tryexponent. So at the link that I just pasted below, hopefully that comes in. Let me know if that link is not working for some people. But basically at the link below, you can actually do a version of this where you interact with me. It's kind of like Black Mirror or Bandersnatch, and you can actually click different buttons in the bottom to navigate different options. And it's a good way to kind of recap what you just did. Sharik is asking, oh, if the new outage is the issue, why is only Android users impacted? So Sharik, if you remember, when I answered that question, I answered it before we found out that it was just in the country of Brazil. And the reason there were more Android users, I did not say that there were no iOS users. The reason there were more Android users is that in the country of Brazil, there's a higher proportion of Android users than iOS users. And so that was maybe a clue that you might need to look internationally or like not in the US to find out where that issue is happening. But if we normalize to the country of Brazil, it wouldn't be different between iOS and Android. Hopefully that answers your question. Sharit, yeah. Okay, awesome. So hopefully people had fun with that one. And again, like, please, if you had fun, like, send us a like or subscribe to our channel. Like, I would love to keep saying that, just because I would love to have all of you join our community. And I know it's really easy to forget to do some of that stuff. So if that was an exciting thing to you, let me know by liking this video or sending us a message saying something. This is our first time being live, so it's really helpful to get feedback from all of you about what's working and what's not working. Um, Cool. So that's the question that we did today. We'll do other questions in other sessions as well, probably, if this works well. But again, it's helpful to get a sense from you if this was fun or if this was maybe too confusing. I do want to talk about how we would go about answering this in an ideal world. Okay, so let's imagine that I had all foresight. How would Stephen go about answering this question? So I'm going to answer that, and then I'll leave some space at the end for some Q&A, and we'll try to wrap at maybe like 7:55 or something like that. Oh, and it seems like this is helpful. That's awesome. Thanks everyone for letting me know. And so, and again, you can check out more mock interview videos at our YouTube channel. We have a whole channel, so we have like tons of mock interview videos. We launch them every week. And then we have even more professional mock interviews in Exponent at tryexponent.com. And you can navigate through our courses. We have some free videos just on our website that you can check out, and a ton more resources, guides, prep, practice platform, all that good stuff. And so don't interview alone, basically interview with Exponent. There's a whole community of people that are in our community that are preparing for these types of interviews. So how would I answer this question? I would think about what it takes for a byte of information to get from the client to the server. Okay, so when I think about that and what might be going wrong, I would say, okay, first, let me think about the most client thing, which is kind of like the human being. So maybe there's some issues with people. People are not into Facebook anymore, or there's a big scandal where people are not using Facebook, or there's a big disaster that erupted that caused a lot of people to not use Facebook. That's hypothesis one. That's the most client level. Let's go up to the hardware. Maybe it's the phone. Maybe it's my iPhone is causing issues. Like the Facebook just recently updated their app, but and it doesn't work with the hardware device. Or maybe like the specifically, let's say like iPhone. This is an iPhone 20. An iPhone 20 just came out, and it does not work with the Facebook experience. And so we can slice again. We can slice by that, find out if it's only on that hardware version, and we can figure out if it's the issue. Then let's pop up to the operating system. So maybe the new iOS that I downloaded is causing the issue. And so, new iOS 20 is causing Facebook to not work. Again, we can slice. Maybe it's the app update. The specific Facebook app that I downloaded on my phone is causing issues. That could be another problem. And so we might want to look into that or understand if the app version is the issue. And I think someone figured it out today. I think Abi was the one who got it, who mentioned like, oh, we should just look at the version 14.0, version 13.0, and see which one is causing the issue. And then we can go up to the network layer, which is where the issue was there. We can go even up to the server side. There could be a server side bug that was pushed or something like that, or even like a data center. But again, I'm kind of following this like byte of information as it goes from the client to the server as I go through testing these hypotheses. I know we were doing this via chat, so it wasn't sort of like the same effect, basically. But that's how I'd go about the answer. Hopefully that's helpful. Does anyone have any questions about this particular interview question or anything on PM interviewing in general? I'm happy to answer some questions for the next maybe like 5 minutes or so. And again, like we have tons of resources online, and if this is valuable, give us a like, and we'll do more of these in the future. It helps us encourage us to do more. Yeah, so Dana is asking about Exponent's peer mock interview tool. And so Exponent, we recently launched a peer mock interview tool where every day at 6 p.m. Pacific time, you can log in, you'll join a waiting room, and you'll be matched with a perfect practice partner. We have information about all the profiles of the people that join our community, and we'll put you in a room with someone to do a practice mock interview. There is nothing better than practice to get better at your interviews, and this is an awesome, awesome opportunity. You can check it out at tryexponent.com/practice. Where you can practice for your peer mock interviews. So hopefully that link works, and you can check it out there. You have to be a member in order to join, and you can check out like our full site to kind of see like how you would join and be a member and things like that. We're really excited to have you in the community, and you can match up with other people for practice interviews. Daniel, thanks. Please do more. These are great. This is really awesome feedback, so I really appreciate it. Thanks everyone. And Rhythm is asking, there are many execution questions. What approach should we follow? Rhythm, check out simulator.tryexponent.com. And you can see kind of like a suggested sort of approach there that might be helpful. We don't recommend one approach for all. We're actually very framework light. We do not recommend a lot of frameworks because if you do too many frameworks, it's kind of obvious to the interviewer and it's sort of a drag for everyone. Okay, people are asking some different questions that are really awesome. So, yeah, like I think, you know, okay, so what inspired me to make this service? So I'll try to answer that from Tim. I think ultimately, interviewing is really anxious, like anxiety inducing. There's a lot of challenging parts to it. And when I was interviewing for roles, I remember not having any resources out there to help me, or like very few. And so, what I'd love to do is to create a community of people that care about helping each other ace their careers and get the jobs that they want. And what we found, like maybe people might think like, oh, like it's competitive, people won't want to do that. But we've actually found like a super vibrant community in the Exponent channel, which has been really, really awesome. And so tons of people are out here helping each other interview better, doing practice sessions with each other, having an opportunity to actually like type up answers and get feedback on those answers. We have all of that stuff in the Exponent community, which is really, really awesome. And so one way we see ourselves as like super different is how focused on the community that we are. And so we bring people in all over the place to do these peer mock interviews, to do written practice with each other. And then, the community is great, but we also have these experts, people who have been through Exponent before, who give back to the community by doing these expert mock interviews or helping to coach people. And so if you want to get a sense of more of what Exponent is like, just check out our YouTube channel and check out some of the videos that are on our channel to see kind of like how we do our videos, why we really emphasize a practice-based learning approach, and how we really emphasize, empathetic and supportive kind of anxiety-reducing tactics in getting better at interview prep. And yeah, I would love for you to check out our website and things like that too, at tryexponent.com. Yeah, I know the debate is starting soon, so I know that's why I'm going to get off soon too. But yeah, I think I'll be doing these live videos. We'll see. I'm not totally sure how many times we'll do them, but we have a lot of content, so just subscribe on YouTube, and I'll try to let you know. We do have a listserv. You can sign up for free at tryexponent.com as well. You can check it out there. I'll try to answer one or two more questions. Let's see. Oh, Andrew is asking, let's end on this one. What was your most memorable PM interview, either that you conducted or you answered questions for? I remember like a really cool answer to something that I was asking. A question that I was asking was like, let's imagine you have a million flip phones and it's today. How would you sell those flip phones, or what target customers would you send those flip phones to? And the answer that I thought was really creative that someone came up with was like positioning flip phones as kind of these like vintage, like Urban Outfitters kind of phones that like are really cool and hip, and like hipsters have them or something. I thought it was kind of a cool answer. They came up with a couple other really creative ideas, like maybe sell them to movie sets because like they need them to do movies that were filmed in the 90s or something like that. And there's a lot of really creative, fun ideas that come out of like constraints, like having flip phones and having to sell them today. So I thought that was kind of a creative answer that I really liked, that I'd like to share. Thanks everyone for joining. I would love to answer all these other questions, but I do want to go again. If you want more content like this, subscribe, like, and visit us at tryexponent.com. I want to thank everyone for coming and for having a really engaging, fun session. And yeah, definitely let me know. Reach out to us if there's any other ways we can help support you in your career. And I'm glad that this was really useful for everyone. And as I like to end all my videos, good luck on your upcoming interviews. Bye, everyone.